Hi, I'm Miriam and Tannis.
And I'm Tannis.
And the highest and best use for our business is design.
Thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about techniques to optimize your land, structure, skill sets, and time, as well as the highest and best use principles to make your business more profitable, productive, and efficient. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Today, oh my gosh, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Tannis, Miriam Anderson, I'm very excited for the show today.
Thank you so much for having us, Ryan. We're so honored to be here.
Yeah, and hey, thanks for making the trip from Buffalo.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
Oh my gosh, this is great. So, and I'm glad we could do it with the borders and everything.
Yes,
Everything was
so
good.
easy.
So, a couple quick notes about you guys. Tannis is an investor from Southwestern Ontario, as well as a realtor. I had that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you have been an architect and a designer in 3 continents.
Yes.
Jesus.
So, I trained in the UK, so I'm a registered architect in the UK. Then my husband brought me to the USA.
Dragged you over?
Yeah, dragged me over. And then we went to Australia for a couple of years and worked with a lovely design studio there, and actually still work with them from North America. We came back to North America during the pandemic.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so I'm excited for the show today. So this show is going to be all like the design-centric stuff. Okay, so 3 quick topics. The history of the design. Number 1, where have we started to how have we got to where we are today? So if we go back in history, can we talk a little bit about that, and then maybe bring that through to modern design? Like what does it mean, and why do we design the way that we design now? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, highest and best use of various finishes. Homeowner versus investor versus various business models and things like that, right? What do we do to up the value of properties, and why does design matter? How do we make money with that? Okay, and then number 3, integration of design into those various business models. So new construction, flipping, maybe renovations. Do you do things differently in a reno versus a new home, right? How does that all play out? So that's where I want to take the show. You guys go with that?
Great.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so just do a quick, I did the quick bio. If you guys want to introduce yourself a little bit more formally, I'd love to hear it in the listeners.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I'm Tannis. Nice to meet everybody here. And again, thanks for having us on, Ryan. So I'm actually originally from British Columbia. I moved to Windsor, Ontario 4.5 years ago with my partner, Michael Anderson. And it was very specifically because we had one door closed and we had to open another one. We were priced out of British Columbia. We had to find another way to get into real estate. So I was very, very fortunate when I first started dating Michael that he had a property portfolio in mind, and that was his dream. And we just kind of joined our passions and made the move, packed up everything, our whole entire life into a truck and trailer, and made the move to Windsor, Ontario. Awesome. Without seeing it, just Googling it and just going with the flow.
You just Googled it?
Yeah, we just Googled it.
Like,
we didn't.
Windsor, that's the place for us.
Absolutely. We actually had a mentor in Vancouver that kind of guided us towards Windsor and said, listen, I think you can get in early before it kind of gets bigger. And so that was kind of our break. So we took the opportunity and we just left everything behind and made the move. So
that's cool. I'm sure pricing would be substantially different 4.5 years ago from Vancouver to Windsor.
Absolutely.
And even today, the same thing.
Definitely. Yeah. It was the way we could get our ladder property, right?
Yeah.
To be able to scale up. And so we're very thankful we made the move when we did.
Awesome. Miriam?
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam. I am a architectural and interior designer. Originally from Ireland. I trained in the UK, and the majority of my experience is in London. So I have a little over 10 years of experience. I graduated in the last recession, moved to London like everybody else at the time. And the majority of my clients there were residential, some commercial, worked a lot in heritage buildings and in extending homes. And then I met my husband in London, which brought me to the US. Both of us wanted to get on the property ladder. We knew we wanted our first home to be a duplex, to be an investment property, and that was not going to happen for us in London. So that's what brought us to Buffalo. Buffalo was much more accessible at the time.
Is a duplex in London the same as a duplex in North America, like we know?
No. When people refer to a duplex in London, they usually mean an apartment with 2 floors.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would call a duplex.
I think it's the same for New York. Like in New York City, a duplex is 2 levels, or
right?
It's
2 levels,
okay.
and then now in my vocabulary, a duplex is a 2-family home.
Yeah, it's like a basement apartment. It's not quite as sexy as a 2-level home in New York or in London.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted. We wanted a 2-family home. My husband was just, insisting that we weren't going to, have a mortgage unless it was going to give us some return.
Sure.
And that's how, Buffalo was very accessible at the time. It's come up a little bit now, but we were able to pick up a little duplex for $69,000.
Oh my God. It's the cost of a bathroom renovation here or something.
Totally.
That's ridiculous, right?
Totally.
I know.
A whole house for $69,000.
It was, and we renovated that for 2 years. I worked remotely for a London-based company.
Yeah.
Then we moved to Australia for 2 years. Worked there with a small design studio who have global projects, and moved back about 2 years, and then we moved back during the pandemic.
No way.
So we're in Buffalo now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How do you do design and architecture remotely?
Lots of communication.
Yeah.
Like it is, it's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
You generally need someone on the ground, someone there. So, for example, the company I work with, we've been doing high-end retail for a clothing brand, and it's an Australian clothing brand.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone global in the last 10 years, but they've maintained one designer, which is the studio I've been working with, and they manage all those projects from Australia.
Yeah.
And you might hire an architect of record in the country, and they're sort of your eyes and ears on the ground. And a lot of it comes down to really good drawings too. Really good communication. Your drawings have to be perfect.
Right. So you say that's interesting. Architect of record. So when you're doing that, are you doing the legwork and then you're putting it through somebody who's local because they need to be licensed of some sort?
Yeah.
Or is that?
Yeah, they would need to be licensed in that state in order to obtain the permits.
Yeah. Okay.
So we would typically do a full design package. And then the architect of record would take that package and prepare the permit documents, and that would be their responsibility to obtain the permits and be the architect within that state.
Interesting. Is it like that here too? Do you know?
You would have to. Yeah, you would most likely either need an architect or a BCN designer.
Yeah, that's true.
So if it was vice versa, if somebody from the U.S. wanted to do the work for somebody in Canada, you'd have to filter it through somebody in Canada.
Correct.
Yeah. Architects in the U.S. can practice in Canada and vice versa. No. Within certain states, there's some limitations.
BCIN, does that cross over as well? Do you know?
I don't think so. No.
I don't think so.
All right, cool. Let's break into history of design. So, the history of design. So, I'm curious about this because I always like to know where we've come from to where we're going or to where we are now, right? Like if you look at a lot of the architecture in Windsor, I mean, there's a lot of really old stuff there.
Yes.
And same with downtown Toronto, same with Buffalo. There's some beautiful stuff in Buffalo. My brother actually went to Buff State. So, like there's just some really, really, like you get one street that's not so questionable and not so great, and then you go to another one and it's fantastic. You've got these big Victorian homes. The history of architecture maybe in Windsor, why don't we start there? Do you know a little bit about kind of where the city has come from to where it is today?
Yeah, I mean, the city of Windsor, it's definitely diverse in history. I mean, you can go back to the rum runner days back in Hiram Walker and across the border. We are so super close to Detroit. We have the Detroit River that runs along our downtown core. So definitely we have a whole section of town that is called Walkerville. And that was essentially, Walkerville has a lot of rich history with Hiram Walker itself, with the plant. And he actually developed, had a Detroit architect plan a bunch of housing in that area for his employees. He wanted his employees to live in really good, solid, character-filled homes, and that's kind of the start of the history in that section of town.
Well, that's really cool because usually when factories open up housing for their workers, it's not the best. Yeah, it's low-level, blue-collar workers that don't have the greatest living accommodations, truthfully. So it's neat that they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was nice to see he took care of you could say his family, right? I hesitate to say employees because exactly what he did is, he treated them like family. He wanted them to have a good quality of life and be happy at work.
More so brick architecture, or is there siding or some type of composite in there?
A
Or
lot
is it
of brick,
Yeah.
a lot of full brick buildings, and then they've been kind of tweaked over the years, but we still have a lot of that heritage there.
Any conversions going from commercial to residential, or maybe vice versa?
Yeah, definitely lots of conversions happening in Windsor. We have a lot of great incentives and grants, essentially, in the downtown core specifically. That's kind of the target of the area right now, is to
Yeah.
really take care of our downtown core, because it's such the heart of the city, right? So lots of things happening there, and then of course conversions all over the different communities to get that intensive housing up.
What's the density in Windsor?
So we don't really have a lot of high rises.
Okay.
The tallest building we have right now is the Caesars Palace Casino. So that is we don't have the density, you could say, in terms of the vertical. But the tallest apartment building, I believe, is 31 floors that we have. Okay. So we have room for improvement. Absolutely.
You're creeping up there. 31 floors. That's still pretty tall, right?
Yeah, but that was back in the 80s. So we definitely need to get some new ones in. And
I wonder if that was pre-interest rate hike.
Yeah.
You know how the interest rates went crazy in the 80s?
For sure. Could be.
Right.
Because, I mean, financing plays such a role in a lot of this.
Absolutely. And we see so many cranes in Detroit, and, we're just waiting for a matter of time before people come over to Windsor, and we know that there's a lot speculated to come in, so we're excited about that.
Can you still buy a house for $1 in Detroit?
That you may know better, but
I did hear rumors about that, but I'm not sure.
I think we're going back 5 years, 8 years, something like that, like 2008, 12.
Definitely.
You could buy a house for $1, provided that, like caveat 2, ... you fixed it up.
Yes.
You hold on to it for a certain amount of time.
Maybe that too.
Yeah. I can't remember what those.
If only we could buy houses for $1.
Absolutely. That'd be nice.
What about Buffalo? What's the architecture like in Buffalo?
Buffalo has a really rich architectural history. It's known for quite a few Frank Lloyd Wright houses. Because again, at the turn of the century, around the beginning of the 1900s, it had a lot of industry, a lot of wealth. So people got to spend a lot of money on beautiful homes. It was also architectural exhibition was held there.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of buildings purpose built for that exhibition, but unfortunately they were all pulled down. So that is, yeah.
So they built it just for the thing, and then
they built it, and sometimes they do hold on to them, but in this, whenever Buffalo went into decline and they needed materials during the Great Depression, they started pulling all the buildings apart to get the steel out of them. Yeah.
Huh.
So we're left with, it still has some great landmarks, and a lot of people will come to Buffalo to see those, but unfortunately a lot has been taken away too.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a historical society in Buffalo that protects a lot of this?
There is. They're not, I wouldn't say it's as rigorous as cities like Boston or New York City, but there is, yeah.
Because, I mean, when they pull these old buildings down, they keep the facades, especially in Toronto.
Yeah.
You get this really beautiful Victorian, or limestone building, with a granite base or something, and they're like, we want to put up this 40, 50-story high-rise. Yeah. But they make you save the facade.
Yeah.
Right.
The cost of that is significant.
Huge. Yeah.
Do they have any of the restoration type of work there?
The skills, so that's something that I don't want to, I have seen there are some custom plaster workers who do a lot of work in the interior of buildings and recreating the old cornicing and plaster work that would have been there. I haven't any personal experience with it, but I have spoken to people who, the mansard roofs that would have been built out of slate.
Slate roof. Yeah.
There was a few of them in the downtown area, and I was speaking to somebody who owned one, and she was saying that she couldn't find anyone to fix it. And it was just something that stayed in my mind, that we're probably lacking those skills.
Yeah.
To,
slate and copper and all that stuff. I mean, those materials are so expensive now.
Yes.
And B, it's an art.
Yeah.
It is.
Somebody to do that.
And one of the things that, when we bought our house, I really wanted to restore the sash windows. And it's a really common thing to do in the UK because planning requires it. You are not allowed typically change any. If you're in a conservation area, you're not allowed to change any of the front of the building, so that includes the windows. So what you can do is you can take out the single glazing and you can get this really thin double glazed unit that's specifically for heritage buildings. It helps bring up the value of the window. You can install that, and there are people whose entire careers are going around, restoring these windows, resealing them. And I had just moved from London, and I was like, we'll just do that. No.
Not here.
No.
It's different.
Yeah. So that didn't happen, and we ended up putting in vinyl windows, which sort of broke my heart.
Sure.
Oh.
The wood is so authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It,
Yeah.
it peels and it's
Mhm.
cold and they're drafty and sometimes they stick, but man, do they look good.
Yeah, they look really good, and they're maintainable too. You know, if they've
Yeah.
lasted 100 years, they're
Yeah.
probably gonna last another 50
Yeah,
if
true.
they're looked
Tried and
after.
True.
You know?
True. We recently did a house a very similar fashion. And it was all wood windows. And my wife was like, no, we got to keep the windows. They look great. Sometimes when you look through the glass, they have that ripple to them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't know if that's leaded glass or something similar, but
Yeah.
of that character anyways.
Yes, yeah,
right?
the old
Yeah,
glass.
I love that.
It's how they make it. Yeah,
Mhm.
it
So-
makes a little.
So let's go down the path of building materials. So historically, from a design perspective, I feel like we're going like Windsor Buffalo. Windsor Buffalo. So we'll keep doing that.
Sure.
You're gonna test my Buffalo knowledge
I
now.
don't know. Yeah.
And my
we'll go-
Windsor.
We'll go like Windsor, Buffalo, London.
I'm new to Windsor.
Yeah. What are you typically seeing in the historical parts of Windsor
Mhm.
where they were using different materials than they were using or they are using today?
Yeah, so again, I think, you know, like Miriam kind of talked about a little bit, it's sometimes we can't source certain things, or, you know, there's maybe not the people to exactly install them or even create them, right? So they're trying to stick with the natural materials as much as possible, but mostly just, again, going back to a lot of the original paint colors of the time or the era, you know, and if they can preserve the actual building itself with brickwork and, you know, doing some pointing work. I know they're even particular about what you wash the brick with and things like that. So they're really trying to stay as original as possible.
Yeah.
And they are very picky on new materials because, again, if they weren't created in the time, then they don't necessarily want that on the facade of the house.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Being picky about washing the brick.
Yes, absolutely.
Certain acids, I guess, would etch it
Correct.
in a way that changes the color.
Yes, it essentially changes the
I think
building
it can
look
draw
too.
out some of the minerals of the brick too.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
So there was a project that I saw once that had all this streaking down the brick,
Mhm.
and it was the rain. Like if you know now we have this acid in our rainwater,
Yes.
and it was like the bricks were leaching.
Yeah.
The minerals were being pulled out of them.
That's interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So then,
Yeah.
do you know the type of brick that they used to use? I know it's like a really technical question, but sometimes it was clay and sometimes it was something else.
Yeah, I think, and that, again, that's not something in my wheelhouse that I would know, but I
Sure.
can tell you that the bricks were not in the perfect shape, right? They weren't the perfect square rectangular bricks like we see today. So they were either molded differently or in a different way, and what they were made of, I don't know. But you can definitely tell when a building has an older type of brick in comparison to a newer, you know, 90s style brick. So
All
it's,
the corners are weathered and it's got so much character.
yeah, it's got some chippiness to it,
If
you
the
know.
brick could tell a story.
Exactly.
It's like a pair of jeans, right? If
yes.
those jeans could talk.
Do you know why the
Yes.
size of a brick is the size it is?
Tell me. I don't.
It's to fit in a man's hand.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you look at these building materials, I always like the Tate Modern or some of these really old,
Yep.
like huge buildings in London, and you just kind of look at it like, yeah, a man built that brick by brick.
Wow.
And so he needs to have a material he can pick up and
Alright.
fits in his hand, and
We'll have to change the size of the
Yeah.
bricks now.
yeah. Maybe we figure out. I don't know.
Oh, that's
But
fun.
yeah, you wouldn't have had the machinery that we have today.
Right.
Yeah. How would that roll into something like stone? So obviously stone can't fit in anybody's
Yeah.
hands, man or woman. The use of stone in somewhere like Buffalo. I'm a huge fan of limestone buildings
Yeah.
with the granite base. Why did they use limestone back in the day? Do you know?
Well, typically, you see brick used in more humble buildings,
Mhm.
and stone was had more reverence, like churches, government buildings. If you had it's a way of showing wealth and power.
It's a state, like a
typically.
stately
I think
piece.
it's
Yeah.
that's what I would and use big pieces of stone like that. That would be.
Would they
carved
crane?
out.
Would they crane them in, or was this like an ox cart type of thing?
I don't know. I should know, but I don't know.
You'd think you'd have to get some help.
Yeah, that's what you. Yeah, they must have some sort of cranes or lots of guys.
Isn't the Empire State Building clad with limestone? Like that
Yes.
beautiful
Yeah.
beigey, creamy
Yeah.
beige color?
Yeah.
Okay, so then with something like you guys had mentioned slate roof earlier. Do you see a lot of slate roof in Windsor?
Not a whole lot, but I think again with the older buildings for sure. Yeah, and I think we would all love to be able to do slate in this day and age. I would
be
love
so
to be able
neat.
to incorporate
Yeah,
slate.
that was
But-
that was a learning curve for me
Yeah.
when I moved to the United States. I still remember the time I was sitting on a traffic light and I was like looking at this roof. And I was like, is that asphalt on the roof?
Wow.
And he's like, yeah. My husband was like, yeah, of course it is. What else? And I was like, oh. Because you don't see that.
You don't.
That's not
No.
used in Europe. That's a
Right.
real North American thing.
Do you think London used slate predominantly because they get a lot of rain?
Durability,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, there is Irish and Scottish slate.
Right.
So it's a local,
How do they
relatively low.
Are they different color?
I actually don't know. But it's just, I guess it's a relatively local material. Most of our slate now comes from China.
Yeah.
The Irish
But-
are like, we're not putting the Scottish stuff
Yeah.
on. No.
But maybe that's why. And then you notice down in the European countries, like Southern Europe, it's more clay tiles that they use on their roofs.
Mhm.
So I guess it was just availability.
Okay, and then historically, on the interior of a home, we've touched on the exterior. On the interior, you'd mentioned plaster moldings. Are we still doing this in today's times, or is this a thing of the past? Who wants to take this one?
I think people are coming back to it. I think there's generally a trend or an appreciation of the mark of the hand. People like things that are handmade.
Especially in a
whether
world that's becoming more and more
Yes.
mechanized or
Yes.
digital.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that everything is mass produced, that now we're beginning to look back and put value on these things. I think when I say stucco, sometimes people think something that's very textured.
Yeah, like a stucco ceiling or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's got really good acoustic qualities and it feels great. So we sometimes put that in the interior of the stores.
Mhm.
And then sometimes we get, plaster cornicing, molding around doors, and if you want, and
Yeah.
people like that.
It's so pretty.
It's
When you get
beautiful.
that,
Really
you see a
is.
precast
Beautiful.
fireplace surround,
Yes.
or you
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
all these big heavy moldings.
Yeah.
It just adds so much depth to
Beautiful.
the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, if we go trim, so on baseboards, would they ever have done a plaster baseboard, or would it always have
No.
been a harder material?
I think it would have been
Hard,
hardwood.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so plaster crown.
Plaster crown,
Hardwood base.
plaster on your walls,
Yeah.
plaster
Yeah.
ceiling roses.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
What would they have done in London before plaster? Just straight stone, or has it always been plaster?
I haven't seen a building that hasn't been like plastered on the interior.
Right.
Maybe it would have been plaster.
Mhm.
I have seen, we did a building in Belgravia. It was from the 1800s, and the slab was bricks
Mhm.
held on steel
Really?
strips. Yeah,
Wow.
it was, and then I had to allow them plaster ceiling over that.
Okay, so what about flooring? What are you typically seeing in some of these historical buildings for flooring? Is it always wood? Is it something else?
Mostly wood, I'm
Yep.
seeing anyways. That's, the hardwood, the original hardwood floors.
Yeah.
Just I would say that would be the most common I would see. How about
And
you?
terrazzo.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
making,
Yes, I
it's making
forgot
its
about
way
that.
back now.
Yeah.
Terrazzo would have been quite an economical
Mhm.
finish.
Is that a solid
Really,
stone, or do you
really-
pour it?
You pour it.
You pour it.
So it is. It started in, I think it goes back to Italy, and when all the
Oh yes, back to Italy.
Back
it does. It even gets more romantic than that.
Oh, do tell. We got a great soundbite coming up.
This is amazing.
It was all the offcuts and chippings from sculptors when sculptors would be working with marble.
No way.
And they would find a way, how would they use all these? And
Yeah.
then, so you'd have all these different colored marble and you'd put it into cement or like whatever
Yes.
the lime mix was, and you pour that as your
Yes.
floor. And it's extremely durable.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
So this is
really, really
recycling
hard.
before recycling.
Definitely. I love it.
So on the investment side, so if we've done, like we've got beautiful design and we're looking at all these really cool finishes from back in the day, we're taking that into modern times. What is the highest and best use of design? Like what are you guys doing with some of your projects to actually put this to work? How do you make money with it?
Yeah, so we were actually heavily talking about this morning because it's a topic we feel so passionate about, especially Miriam as an architectural designer, myself as a real estate agent, and both of us being real estate investors.
Yeah.
We were really talking about the feeling of properties and really leaning into when you walk into the door, what do you feel, right? And especially myself as a real estate agent, when I'm showing clients, which are heavily focused in investor clients, they're not quiet about their opinion when they first walk in the door, right? So I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I listen to see what they say. What are the kind of patterns that they're identifying in properties,
Right.
And really leaning into that feeling of different topics such as lighting, for example, which Miriam can talk a little bit more about. The importance of lighting is a very important one.
I'm a light bulb freak, just so you guys know. If it's not the right color of light,
Yeah.
it freaks me out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. There you go.
It's not. Okay, so this is so weird. Okay, I like a 3000K light bulb. That's the temperature I
Okay.
prefer. If it's too cold, right, it feels like a pharmacy. If it's too warm, then your place looks orange.
Yes.
Right? I think it can totally change the
Okay.
dynamic of a room.
Absolutely. And we were talking even...
Please chime in. Please, God,
Oh,
somebody
so happy.
support me.
Well,
Oh my God.
We could talk about lighting for probably 8 hours,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
this is
it's,
fantastic.
If I was to focus, if I was an architect, I think I'd be a lighting designer. That's how passionate I am about it. I think it's incredibly important. I think it can make or break a space.
Yeah.
And like you said, when LED lighting, before LED, we all had incandescent bulbs, and they're about 2700 Kelvin. So that's about the temperature. And of them. And then whenever LEDs first came out, they were all really cold. And I'm not sure why. I don't know. Maybe that was just
Fluorescence too.
the
The
way
curly
the
bulbs.
technology-
Those
yeah.
curly bulbs that
Yes.
came out.
Yes.
maybe that's just how the technology evolved, and
Yeah.
it was cheaper and easier to make a cooler light. I'm not so sure why. And then everybody started putting these real cool LED bulbs in their homes. But any interior designer will tell you, or architect, their rule of thumb generally will be 2700K for all your interior lighting, unless you have a specific reason.
Interesting.
So if you want to, if you want it to be moodier, you might, if you're a restaurant, for example, you might
Yeah.
want to use like,
It's like soft, inviting.
2200K, and it's going to be this really warm light.
Would that be like an Edison bulb? Would
Yes,
an Edison
exactly.
bulb- yeah,
An
okay.
Edison bulb is about 22. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Just like that. And then people will use very cool light for security. Like we know that it's like blue light raises your cortisol levels.
Really?
Yeah, that's why
Wow.
why we wear these blue light blocking glasses now.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't be exposed to blue light before you go to sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and if you walk around some of the cities in Europe, if you go down some of the back alleys, you'll see where people have their garbage cans or whatever, they'll have like a really blue light, like an obvious, because it's a deterrent. It stops people from hanging around in those areas.
Something as simple as
blinking.
lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's really powerful. And so security, if you want a security light, might be the only reason that you would use a very cool white light, in my opinion.
You walk into a Walmart, it's like bright
Yeah.
white.
But everything else, even our exterior lights, for residential purpose, I would have 2700 to 3000 Kelvin.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're right in the mark, Ryan.
God bless.
Yeah.
She'd be like, no, you got the wrong
I
bulb.
wouldn't
And I'd be
go
like, oh
any
my God, change them all.
I usually do pick. There's less available. Most things that you pick up are 3000.
Yeah.
That's their warm white. It's harder to get to 2700. But if I had to pick, I'd pick 2700.
Nice. So when you go through a property, if you see multicolored light bulbs, like if you see a 2700 and then you see a 5000, like one's cool and one's warm,
Yeah.
that's got to throw a buyer off.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, going back to that feeling, right? It's like walking in and where's the thought here?
Yeah.
Right? It's a simple thing like the lighting, and then even the natural lighting, that's a whole nother topic. You know, we're talking about artificial lighting here, but the windows, where the windows are placed, where the door's placed, and is there skylights in the ceiling? So it all comes to play with feeling when you walk in the door.
How do you think that affects something as simple as a light bulb? So $5,
Yeah.
right, for a bulb or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you think that affects a buyer's perspective by saying this house is great or this house isn't great? Because I mean, that could totally change everything.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, like people notice, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like putting that extra thought into getting the same type of light bulb and the same tone. And again, not getting that really harsh blue light like Miriam was just describing. It can make or break.
Do you think people prefer more natural light or less natural light, or is it contextual based on the room?
Always more.
Yeah,
Always
I think.
Well, no. I mean, obviously, you don't want, if you have a TV room, you typically want that to be snug, and you
Right.
don't want lots of natural light in there.
Okay.
I haven't walked into a house and said, "Oh, there's way too much natural light in here."
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You know?
But we're human, right? Like that's what we crave. Like just like plants need light, we need light too,
Yep.
right? And it's like it's a thing for our mentality. It's a thing for our feeling. Like it makes us feel good, right?
It's really,
it's nature.
They now give awards to architects for their use of natural light. It's so important. I
Like
think.
shadow lines and highlight lines
Yeah,
and things?
how
Or?
you draw light into. There's the company that won it last year was an Irish architectural company called Grafton Architects, and they did this university in Berlin, and the entry hall was below street level. It was just incredible how they were able to draw the light down into that space. And they talk a lot about sometimes light will travel better along a wall, along a surface. So it's just thinking about that. And that's one of the tips I would give to people if they're laying out their lighting in their property is you can illuminate a space by illuminating a wall. You don't have, that will bounce the light. You don't have to have like a light bulb right there.
Right.
Because it'll often, like you say, it'll come right into your eyes and you're sitting on the couch and you're being blinded. So it might be better to push your lights up against the wall and let the wall.
It's a subtlety.
Let the wall carry the light.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I always found that if you could see the filament of the bulb, it took away the illusion of what that light bulb could potentially do if it was shielded. Is that a design thing or is that just a personal preference?
What do you mean by that?
So like if you see exterior lighting, for example, on a building, we talked about this a few minutes ago. If you see exterior lighting on a building and you can see the filament of the bulb, it's sharp on the eye. It's piercing.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But if they shield that filament of the bulb and it sort of cascades up a wall, or it changes the mood and it changes the feel, and then potentially changes the value of the home. Are you guys seeing that, or is it just a preference thing?
No, I would agree with that for sure. Yeah, you don't want to be.
I would say I think it's good to follow your instinct on that. If you think something looks better, the chances are everybody else will too.
Interesting.
Interesting. Like people will say, "Oh, I want this to appeal. I'm going to be safe because I want it to appeal to a lot more people."
Yeah.
Or I'm going to make a very safe design decision. And I'm like, if it's beautiful, it's going to appeal to a lot of people.
So what are you seeing in the investment community right now? You got homeowner buyers, you got investor buyers. What do investors want to see in terms of design when they go into a property?
The overall flow of the property. People pick up pretty fast if things have been kind of cut up and the cake has been cut up the wrong way, you could say, and it doesn't make sense. And Miriam and I were just actually talking in the car about how back in the day it was quite common to have bathrooms off of kitchens, and a lot of times I have clients come into homes, and we have a lot of homes like that in Windsor, and they say, "Oh, this is kind of weird, the bathroom's right off the kitchen," but that's very standard back in the day, right? So things have changed and adapted for the way we live our life now. A lot of people spent a lot of time in the kitchen back in the day, and I feel like now we spend less and less and less time, and more so in other areas of the house. So so I think it's interesting to kind of identify that.
Open concept or closed concept? What do you prefer?
I love open, but again, that's for purposes of light, for example, bringing in that natural light and just the open space of just kind of conglomerating in the area and not feeling boxed in.
Yeah. What do you think? Open concept or closed concept?
Definitely open.
Yeah.
I think, though, it depends on the person who's... I was thinking about this recently because we were looking at a family home. And we were trying to figure out, do we break this all up and like have it all open? But I thought, if you have kids, do you really want like noise travels? So I'm sort of beginning to change my mind on that a little bit, that it's actually good to have spaces that you can separate off.
Yeah.
So whether that's traditionally your sitting room, and then you could have definitely a fan of open kitchen, living, dining, and then maybe you have a separate room.
When did we convert from open concept or from closed concept to open? I feel like the houses in the 60s were built closed concept and then eventually it evolved. Would that be fair, or am I off?
Yeah, and I think North America led the way on that. Houses being built in the UK and Ireland would still be closed concept. People really like their different rooms. And I think part of it as well comes down to practicalities like heating. It's much easier to heat one small room that you're spending the majority of your time in than to heat a huge room. And so I wonder, and I don't know if this is true, but I wonder if the low cost of energy, particularly in the United States, is sort of what's guided these well, it has allowed that type of living. You can have these really big spaces, and it doesn't really cost you that much.
It always goes back to the money, doesn't it?
I think
it always does.
I wonder if that's what it is.
What, 12-foot ceilings? And it's like all the heat's up top.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Like my mother would come over and she'd be like, turn off that hot water. Like,
Yeah.
you know? But it's different. It's so much more expensive to heat a tank of water in Europe.
So my brother used to live in London. He was playing hockey in London, or just outside of London. And he lived in an apartment. They got 1 tank of hot water per day. And I think that it's not like a North American sized tank. You get 1 tank and the tank was, I don't know, like 2 feet tall and 2 feet round kind of thing. And that's it. That's all you got. And at the end of the day, you got another tank of hot water for the next day because the cost of energy was so significant in England. This was a couple of years ago. Like it was just so significant that they just couldn't, the building couldn't substantiate anymore based on the amount of rent that people were paying. That's incredible. Whereas here, you've got rooms dedicated to furnaces and hot water tanks and water on demand and radiant floor. Like the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And it's driven everything to even our appliances, how they're designed. You know, we have the top loaders in the US that use huge amounts of water, hot water, whereas in Europe you have the front loaders where the washing machines heat the water, so you're only heating what you need, and they're much more efficient. And that's cost drove the design. Absolutely.
Okay. So I want to change gears here. Highest and best use of various finishes. So homeowners, investors, builder grade, things like this. What are you guys seeing in the market right now? Are people going high end? Are they going low end? Are they going somewhere in the middle in terms of the investment game? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, so right now what I'm seeing is kind of people shifting towards being a little bit less on the high end. Again, I guess it depends if it's a new build or if it's, a flip, or it just depends because, for example, if someone's doing a buy and hold in terms of investment, I'm seeing people want a little bit more, I don't want to say turnkey, but they don't want to be putting as much renovation cost into it because they're not going to win on the end of the refi, right?
Okay.
So they're kind of scaling
Why do you
back.
think that is? Why is that?
Just because with everything going on in the market, the appraisers are not appraising. The appraisers are only going back 30 days. They're not really going back. The local ones I've talked to anyway, so I can't speak for everyone. But they're not looking as far back, so they're not able to compare, of course, into the pandemic times when we were appraising well above what we ever dreamed. So we're really scaling back.
Oh, those are the days.
Exactly. So in terms of actually putting in renovation costs, people are scaling back and they're looking for a little bit less of the, you could say the cat pee house or the hoarder house or the smoker's house. They want a little bit less than that, or, better done than that.
So what are we picking for finishes to still achieve a similar design, something that people like, something that's pleasing to the eye, but not spend as much money? What are people doing?
Yeah, for example, in countertops, we can speak, instead of going granite or quartz, we're looking at more of Corian. So something that maybe mimics, that isn't as expensive. It's still expensive. It's still worth it. It's still hardy, but it's not as, as pricey as quartz or granite.
Okay.
So
what else?
I would say in terms of finishes, and we always say don't cheap out on finishes because they're very important. Things that you touch all the time, for example. So hardware and things like that, I think people are not really willing to go cheaper on those things, which is important. And I guess just trying to use what is there already is very important as well. So for example, if your kitchen cabinets are full good quality wood, perhaps they're painting them or refinishing them rather than getting a whole new kitchen.
Gotcha. Okay. What are you thinking?
There seems to be a trend towards new is better. And I think that is because when someone comes into a property, it feels nice when it's new. They want something new, and it's this characteristic that people would like to see. So if you come in and you see all new flooring, that's a real selling feature, not necessarily what it's made out of, just the fact that it's new. You might have new trim. But the reality is that your trim is probably MDF, and your flooring, if it's a flip or if you're trying to save money, and your flooring is probably vinyl plank flooring. A word I keep hearing, lots of PVC on the exterior because it's low maintenance. And I think the word I keep hearing is low maintenance.
Right.
And I've been thinking about this, and I thought, well, there's a difference between low maintenance and maintainable. So you can, if you put down a hardwood floor, you could get 120 years out of that floor.
Sure.
Because you can probably, you can keep refinishing it. It's changeable, it's adaptable. If you stain it and then you change your mind, you can come back, take all that off if you want to. But if you damage a vinyl plank floor, well, there's nothing that you can really do to fix it, to bring it back.
Do you think if investors were to use real wood over something like MDF for trim, for example, whether it's for crown or door casing or window casing, do you think that would bring the value of the home up for the spend in additional cost?
If they knew that this was going to be a house, if they were buying this and they wanted to raise their family in it.
So it'd be specific to the buyer.
Yeah.
Like contextual.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of this, what we're talking about today, is very contextual.
It is.
You know, if you're a homeowner, it's different than if you're an investor. And if you're an investor, it's different than if you're commercial to residential or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And also too, I think something to keep in mind, just to tie that all in too, is are you doing a long-term rental unfurnished, or are you doing a short-term furnished? Because something like natural wood in an apartment is a draw to somebody who's trying to get a unique space for a short term to experience, right? So they might notice that, as opposed to someone staying long-term. It might make no odds, but it is very specific to the
then how would you position yourself if you're going to flip a house versus doing a rental? How would you guys change your thought about the materials being used to maximize the return on that spend?
Durability for rentals.
Okay.
Every time.
Yeah.
I think from the tapware you choose to the bathtub or the shower base that you choose.
Steel tub.
Yeah. Every time.
Steel tub every time.
Every time.
Cast iron,
We'll refinish those till the cows come home.
Yeah.
And really durability every time.
Okay. Interesting. Even if it costs more up front.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say you bought an item and it was twice the cost of something cheaper, but you knew it was going to last longer. Would you spend the money up front, or would you hold off?
I would spend the money up front.
You'd spend the money. What would you do?
And I have to say we would as well,
Yeah.
because one of the things we believe in is deferred maintenance. So we don't know where we're going to be in 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And right now we're living in our local community that we invest in, but we might be in Florida next year for all we know, right? So we really believe in deferred maintenance. So while we have to be budget conscious, like Miriam said, just because it is, different doesn't mean it necessarily costs more. So we have to be cognizant of the cost, but also that we're giving the home or the property good quality materials to last.
Sure. Oftentimes too, it's the same labor to put in something cheap as it is something great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like you can lay laminate, or you can lay hardwood, or you can lay click vinyl, or you can lay whatever. Give or take, the labor's kind of the same.
Definitely.
You're still putting down floor.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think being cognizant too of what can I preserve, right? And I think as an investing community, anyways, we're very much rip it all out and start fresh, right? But there's ways you can, again, speaking on the kitchen cabinets, can you preserve this, or can you preserve this vanity or the bathtub? Just because it's 100 years old doesn't mean it's not good and it doesn't do its job, right?
And those cast iron tubs are heavy as heck to get out of basements and second stories and all this stuff, right?
Absolutely. So
what else would you do in a flip to help raise the value based on the materials that you choose?
The use of wood still is relevant here.
Okay.
I think if you were to view an old house and it's got carpet, what's the first thing you do?
You take the carpet out.
Yeah. You pull up the corner and you go, oh, it's got hardwood floors.
Yeah.
Like, people value that. So I think that is really important. And where I'm coming from with this entire thing, I think good design brings value to your property, or good material choice, whatever it might be, brings value to your property, because ultimately it brings value to people's lives.
We have different types of investment strategies. So we do corporate fully furnished rentals. So that's going to be a little bit different than if we do a regular long-term rental. And again, I want to be hesitant or careful when I say different, because we still do put very high quality, as much as possible, durable materials in, but we try to have those unique pieces that we add into our properties. For example, we both love to refinish furniture. So for example, rather than get a vanity from Home Depot for the washroom, we would do something along the lines of either, number one, getting a custom kind of cabinetry done in the bathroom, again, for durability and look, or we would go get a MCM, mid-century modern dresser, off Facebook Marketplace, which is something that I did in our property, and then we would put a slab on top and a sink, and then that's kind of a standing piece, and when people walk into our washroom, they go, wow, that's so cool, where did you get it? Well, you can't actually buy this,
you cannot.
right? It's a unique piece, so it's kind of we don't necessarily believe when people say it's just a rental. That's something that's a pet peeve of ours, particularly. It's not just a rental. This is a space for a human being. This is a space where somebody is going to come home after a long day of work, or if they work from home, they're already there, right? So it's very important to us that we have that human component in.
Do we see any trends that are sort of formulating now that you think will be the coming things for the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Home office.
Home office.
Kids' schoolroom.
Yeah.
I think you need to look at the trends in society, and a lot more kids are being homeschooled now. So that'll probably lead to people will need those sorts of spaces. Will need home offices. A lot more of that.
Home office. What do you think? Do you think that would change the value of a house? Home office?
A home office? So I think
hang on.
Yeah.
What do you think is more valuable? A home office or an extra bedroom?
Again, that's so dependent, because I always say sometimes a third bedroom doesn't necessarily get you more rent, at least in Windsor.
Yep.
So, for example, if you have a 2-bed and you have a 3-bed, again, sometimes you don't get extra rent for that 3-bed, depending on the area. Right. So is it a heavily dense, populated family area, or is it for students? Again, it's so dependent, so I hesitate to answer that.
What gets you more? Quality, or like a better quality space, or more square footage?
And also, I think that's a really good point, but also remembering that just because we need an office doesn't mean we need an extra room. So, for example, what we did in our duplex is that we had a closet in the master bedroom that we turned the master bedroom into a living room. And we actually cut out the closet and made it into a custom desk space. So it's an arched desk with the roof line kind of coming down, right? So rather than go, who needs a closet in a living room other than, for blankets and things like that, what can we do here? And so Miriam, Michael, and I kind of formulated this plan to do a custom desk space. And that is honestly has been the biggest seller of that property.
Really?
Right? Because again, it's not an extra room, but it's still somewhere someone can put their computer and set up their home office.
The highest and best use of a closet.
The highest and best use of a closet, exactly. So I just want to be cognizant. You don't necessarily need an extra room, but you do need to be creative with your space.
That's cool. I like that. I really like that. So what's next for you as we wind down here? What's next for you guys? What's next for you?
Well, I'm in the process of getting my license in the U.S. right now. And then hopefully to go out on my own. I really love residential, and I want to keep going with that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And what about you? What's next for you?
Yeah, so I'm honing in on the real estate the real estate company. So being a realtor, I'm really enjoying that. But I'm also looking with Michael right now, and soon to be Miriam when we get the next property. We're looking into doing some collaboration with the local community for housing needs. So, for example, people with developmental disabilities, and working with developmental, Ontario. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the
ODSP.
name. So Developmental Services Ontario. So it's a program, and they actually place people in need of homes. So there's many different types of housing requirements and needs. So we're looking into actually doing some purpose-built builds for that, for that community of
Very
people.
Cool.
So
in Windsor.
In Windsor, yeah.
Wow.
So we've got a great contact, and again, that's our passion is to help people. We always say this is a people business, but we really need to feel that this is a people business. It's fine to say it, but you got to feel it as well. And so ultimately, we do want to make an impact, and that's kind of what we're looking into doing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Okay. Oh, who else would be a great guest for the show? You know of anybody?
I know lots of people.
Yeah?
Do you know Paula and Jake from Tartan?
I do.
Have you had them yet?
I have not. Paula and Jake?
I think they'd be fun.
Think they come in person? Are they still, where are they, Cambridge?
Well, I think Jake, I don't know if they're in Florida still.
I think they are, yeah. They do Instagram updates from time to time.
Yeah, they're like, honestly, because sometimes she's posting about Hotel Julie that they're doing that, and then I'm like, are you in Stratford, or are you like, where are you? But I think they'd be awesome if they could come, or whichever.
Okay. Paul and Jake.
Let me think.
Anybody that I wouldn't know? Any builders, land developers, designers? Anybody that I wouldn't know in our typical Ontario, or like our typical networking circle?
So have you ever met Paul Hecht?
No.
So Paul Hecht he's huge into Keyspire, but he's a super smart guy. Okay. I can introduce you if you'd like, but he's actually in Costa Rica right now, so that might not work for a physical, but even just having a conversation with him, he's awesome.
Does he come back at all?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but he actually is one of the reasons why we got into real estate investing. He's very inspirational. He's been and he talks openly about it, but he's been bankrupt a couple times and dug himself up from 0 to 100. So his story is really inspirational to people that are, going through hard times. Yeah. Paul Hecht is awesome, and Alfonso Quadra.
Somebody had mentioned. Is he in Ottawa?
Yes.
Okay.
He has Wealth Genius. He might be a really good one to be on, and he would.
How do you spell Quadra? Nick Legault mentioned him. Do you know Nick Legault?
No.
Do you know Nick Legault? No. He's in Ottawa as well.
Okay.
Builder, developer, whatever. He said Alfonso last week.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think Alfonso would be great.
Okay.
I'll have to think about it, but there's so many. This has been a lot of fun to be on this side of the microphone and to hear, obviously what you're doing to impact communities, and the fact that you've traveled all over the world and done like beautiful designs. And I mean, it's inspiring for me to have you guys here and to hear your stories, and obviously to have you share them with the audience. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah. How can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Tannis_Bents, or Carbon Property Group on Facebook. My name is pretty unique, so just Google it and you'll find me.
BENCE.
Yes, BENCE, fence with a B.
And you can find me on Design for All Time on Instagram. So we're just starting a new little venture there.
Love it.
In line with our principles.
Love it. I checked your Instagram this morning, and I love the way that they did. It was a graphic over multiple squares.
Oh yeah.
It was so cool. Check her out. It's great.
Thanks,
awesome.
Ryan.
Thank you guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks again for listening to the Highest and Best Use podcast. Reminder to sign up to the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Like, follow, share, subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.